The story begins in the beautiful land of Oz, where citizens have learned that the Wicked Witch of the West is now dead. Everyone is excited by this news and began to celebrate. Moment after Glinda the Good Witch descends to greet everyone and confirm the evil witch is truly gone. Soon after they began to sing and chant "No one mourns the wicked." Before Glinda leaves, a young girl asks why does wickedness happen and is it true that Glinda and the Wicked Witch were once friends. Glinda then begins to narrate how the story goes and we are then taken to a flashback. The witch Elphaba was the daughter of a governor known as Throp and his wife Melina, though Elphaba was conceived from an affair with another man. Throp shunned Elphaba after she was born with green skin, which is uncanny and unnatural, but she was raised lovingly by her nurse, Dulcibert. When she was just a little child, Elphaba was protective of her younger sister, Nessarose, who was bound to a wheelchair and born before their mother passed. Just as the two sisters play and bond, some kids arrive and begin to chant some hateful words to bully them. Elphaba's anger furiously causes rocks on the ground to rise up and strike the children, making them leave in tears. Just then, Throp comes out to scold Elphaba as Nessa keeps crying. Meanwhile, the story of the encounter between Glinda and Elphaba all began when the two both attended the same distinguished Shiz University to learn, control and practice magic. However, during her arrival Nessa quickly finds an admirer in a munchkin named Bach, while Elphaba arrives with Nessa. Everybody quickly mocks Elphaba for her green skin and keeps their distance, but Glinda makes a public display by singing in order for them not to stare at her. Glinda uses sarcasm to put up with it and Elphaba uses the opportunity to introduce herself to everyone and explains to them that she has always been green and not because she eats grass when she was a little child. Later on Glinda offers to help Elphaba, but she rejects the offer as she believes Glinda wouldn't have care less what other people think. Glinda quickly befriends Fanny and Shen Shen, which are also freshers, and sees her as their idol. That same day, the students gathered as an individual named Madame Morrible addresses them in order to congratulate them for their admission and to officially start the year calendar. Nearby, a woman named Miss Coddle starts to will Nessa away, despite her insistence that she can take care of herself. Elphaba tries to stop Miss Coddle, which unfortunately causes her powers to go off and make several things and people in the area float in the air for a while and even causes a bench to hit a plaque on the wall. In total confusion, the two sisters just stood together and watched the fear in everyone's faces. Madame Morrible from afar observed Elphaba's gifts, while Nessa isn't happy by all this as all she really wanted was to leave afresh here and everyone not seeing them as weirdos. Elphaba tries to apologize but Nessa leaves upset. Just then, Madame Morrible arrived at the scene, claiming that she did the magic that just happened in order to prepare them to expect the unexpected here. Later, to both Glinda and Elphaba dismay, they are put in the same room by Madame Morrible, where they quickly start to hate each other. Madame Morrible seeks to privately speaks with Elphaba. During their discussion, she asks Elphaba how long she has had this powers but Elphaba informed her that she doesn't remember and believes she has had this ever since she was born. Madame Morrible is of the opinion and idea that she wants to take Elphaba under her wing so that she may eventually meet and work with the legendary Wizard of Oz one day, teaching her how to use and control our powers. Elphaba starts to feel, for the first time, that things are starting to look up for her. Elphaba got to her room where Glinda seems to welcome her into their room and also shows her around the room. While in their room, Elphaba is frustrated about Glinda asking her about the incident that occurred earlier, stating she knows it was Elphaba who did the magic and not Madame Morrible. This alone made Elphaba very furious, which then makes her reveal her powers. Much later, both Elphaba and Glinda attend a class where they are being taught by a goat professor, Dr. Dillamond. Glinda gives him a hard time for being unable to pronounce the Ga in her name, but Elphaba stays behind to help him clean up. The lecture starts as Dr. Dillamond teaches them history. He thanked her for the kind gesture and agreed to be her friend. Dr. Dillamond finds that someone revealed that she should be seen and not heard on the board. That same day, in a sad way, Dr. Dillamond asked who was responsible for that nonsense, but no one answers, so he dismisses the class. The woman then had a discussion with Elphaba regarding the incident that occurred in Dr. Dillamond's lecture. While she narrates how she feels about such acts, and why people act in such a petty way, her powers are then revealed here again. At night, Elphaba overhears Dr. Dillamond meeting with other animals, as they discuss how animals in Oz are being subjugated and losing their ability to speak. Dr. Dillamond spots Elphaba sneaking around and invites her in, since she's not a stranger anymore. They both express shared concerns about the animals being forced to be silent and being put in cages. Elphaba believes that meeting with the Wizard of Oz can help fix things, but first, they need to find a way to reach him. Afterwards, Elphaba goes out into the woods, where she almost gets hit by a handsome Prince Fiero on his horse, because the color blends with the grass. While Fiyero is charming enough and tries to apologize and introduce himself, Elphaba tries not to fall for it and comes off as defensive around him, before leaving. Meanwhile, Glinda is busy putting on her makeover, and once she is done, she heads straight outside, where she meets the prince. She tries charming him with her beauty, which seems to work perfectly well. The two then enter a library building, where Fiyero organizes a sing-off, with every other person joining him as he chants that reading is boring and everyone should have fun. Glinda sets her sights on making him her boyfriend, while Bach, who's been crushing on her, approaches her to ask if they can go together to the party. Glinda instead asks him to take poor Nessa with him, as they are a perfect match, and the plan works. Later that evening, Glinda and other individuals prepare themselves for the big dance party, which is hosted by Fiyero. Elphaba enters the room, and since she doesn't have any nice clothes to wear, Glinda offers her a pointy hat as a gift to wear to the party, saying it was also a gift from her grandma, which Elphaba genuinely appreciates. They all arrive at the event, and it is indeed a hell of a dance, which grows into a huge party. Since Glinda had pushed Bach away to meet Nessa earlier, Bach ends up dancing with Nessa after he sees Glinda messing around with Fiyero and kissing him. Madame Morrible sees Glinda kissing Fiyero and offers her a magic wand as a gift from Elphaba. She also tells her that Elphaba wants her to join her class, and if not for her, she won't be one of her students. Soon after, Elphaba enters the party wearing the pointy black hat that Glinda and her friends gave her earlier as a mean joke. Everyone begins to stare at Elphaba like an outcast, even her younger sister. Elphaba isn't letting this get under her skin, so she takes off the hat and begins to dance by herself, without the music playing, since they had stopped at the moment she entered. Everyone else mocks her and begins laughing at her as she dances in tears. Glinda and Fiyero see that she's alone, and Glinda then starts to dance alongside Elphaba. They both share a hug, and seeing this, everyone joins in and begins to dance and the party continues. From then on, Elphaba and Glinda now consider themselves friends. At home, Glinda and Elphaba have a long discussion, trying to know more about each other. Glinda learns that she has gotten a spot at Madame Morrible's sorcery seminar and thanks her for it. To show more appreciation, Glinda gives Elphaba a makeover, promising that she will make her popular at Shiz University. The next day, everyone gathers at the history lecture hall, but unfortunately for them, Dr. Dillamond gives his goodbye to the students, as he informs them that he is leaving Shiz since they are no longer allowing talking animals to work there. Just then, some officers walk in and forcibly remove Dr. Dillamond, who is in distress, before he is replaced by the rotten Professor Nikidik. He starts his lesson by introducing a frightened lion cub inside a cage, something he considers a great new invention, and further explains to them the many benefits of caging a wild animal at a tender age. However, Elphaba unknowingly produces a spell that puts everybody, including their lecturer, but except Fiyero, to sleep. She then joins Fiyero as they sneak the cub out of Shiz and take it into the woods for safety. Madame Morrible arrives in the hall, and she is shocked by what she sees, so she goes into her chamber and writes a letter to the Wizard of Oz. After Elphaba and Fiyero free the cub, they both begin to talk about Elphaba and why she always cares about the animals. She reveals that she has always felt a connection to them. The two appear to share a moment, but Elphaba doesn't think Fiyero would ever see her the way he sees Glinda, as she states, "I'm not that girl." A few days later, Madame Morrible and some of the school students watch as a mail from the Wizard of Oz arrives in a hot air balloon. After reading the content of the letter, Madame Morrible is happy to inform Elphaba that the wizard wants to meet her, after hearing of how her talents have grown. Now, she only needs to prove herself. Elphaba informs her that she isn't ready yet, but Madame Morrible encourages her to honor their calling. Elphaba later agrees, while Glinda prepares to bid Elphaba farewell. She also announces that, in honor of Dr. Dillamond, she expresses her outrage by saying henceforth she will just be known as Glinda, and not as Glinda anymore. The train is about to leave, and Elphaba can't bear the thought of traveling alone without her best friend, so she calls her to join her at the last minute. Later on, Elphaba and Glinda are brought to meet the wizard himself. He appears from behind a giant robot face. He looks very charismatic and questions if Elphaba wishes for him to do something about her green skin. However, she says she only wants his help with the animals of Oz. Glinda introduces herself, and they have a pretty good conversation. Moments later, Madame Morrible joins them, and they show them the Grimoire book, saying no one has been able to read the words. They are all wowed by this. Afterward, Madame Morrible guides Elphaba to read from the Grimoire. As Elphaba reads an incantation, one of the monkey guards, Chisteri, starts to painfully grow wings on his back. Madame Morrible informs her that it is just the transition, but Elphaba feels very sad about this and doesn't believe it's just a transition. She asks how she could reverse it since this wasn't what she wanted. Madame Morrible then informs her that a spell from the grimoire can't be reversed. Later on, Elphaba sees the same thing happening to all the other monkeys. The wizard and Madame Morrible are delighted at this success, as they think the monkeys can make great new spies across Oz. This was all part of her plan all along. Elphaba quickly realizes that the wizard is not only responsible for what is happening to the animals, but he is also a fraud who is incapable of performing magic. She knows they need someone with actual magical gifts to unlock the grimoire's powers. They try convincing Elphaba, but she leaves immediately. Madame Morrible orders Glinda to go get Elphaba back. Madame Morrible then sends the monkeys and other guards to go after both Glinda and Elphaba. A chase begins, and they are pursued through the tower as they attempt to escape on a hot air balloon. However, their path is blocked, and the balloon bursts after they manage to escape. Madame Morrible soon announces to the entire city that Elphaba is now an enemy and a wicked witch. The two make it to the attic, where Glinda tries to convince Elphaba to make peace with the wizard and Madame Morrible, but Elphaba refuses. She is set to make her escape and tries to get Glinda to join her as she prepares to use a spell to escape into the air, even getting a flying broom to take off. Unfortunately, the guards start to make their way up. Glinda ultimately chooses to stay behind but lets Elphaba go. Elphaba crashes through a window with the broom, plummeting all the way down until she sees her own reflection as a child. Elphaba tries to reach out and grab the broom, then soars high back up into the sky. Her powers cause a powerful surge across Oz as she declares that the wizard is never going to bring her down. Elphaba's little sister listens to her on the radio in sadness. Glinda can only look up in sadness, while the rest of Oz now views Elphaba as a supervillain. Soon after, Elphaba flies off on her broom and disappears. The movie titled Wicked then comes to an end. Kindly subscribe for more recaps like this. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for more.